Hi, this is Sue Greenwald, and I'm with awakenstories.com. I'm here today with a Jedi friend of mine, Eva Santiago. Hey, Eva.
Hey, Sue, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm all right. It's hot over here in this Las Vegas, but
Yeah.
you're in the desert too.
I'm in the desert, but we get cold weather at night, and then during the day, the sun comes and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
So, of course, in the summer, it's just hot all the time, pretty
I know
much.
it's
Yeah. Yeah. But I love it. I love it.
yeah, same
Yeah.
same here. I grew used to it. And now it's
Right.
like, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
when I went to Florida, it was like the humidity, it's beautiful over there, but I was like, I miss Vegas. It's dry. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know when I go to Florida, like the first thing I notice is my skin feels amazing, like all
Yes.
naturally. And I'm like, then I get off the plane here and it's like back to being a raisin, you know?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So we're doing a video series called Becoming Awakened.
Mhm.
And today is your day to, highlight basically your life and your experiences. And one of my goals with these videos, they're super interesting and fun to do, but I'm trying to show we'll call them the average viewer, how all of us have started in different places and
Right.
had different paths. We've had different crises or catalysts or whatever to awaken us. And maybe you've got some different tips or whatever, what someone could do to help themselves move along that path a little quicker. But I really want to show, the average viewer, if you will, that they are on the right path. They could do
Right.
a few things to hasten, but just being open-minded is the first thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
I Go ahead.
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I feel that the number one thing to this is your connection to God, source, whatever you want to call him.
Right.
That's number one. I
Right.
mean, uh, other than that, what have we got?
Right.
Right?
It should really be our most important connection, but I
Mm-hmm.
think so many people have lost it because
Yeah,
we've been focused on the external world, the technology, what's going on in the world, and all of this other stuff, and we
sure.
don't realize it's really within ourselves. But
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
so of course, that's after years of struggle and experience.
Of course. Yeah. We didn't get here by blink and we are here and we're beautiful.
Yeah, like we were talking before we started recording, like our daughters like basically came out of the chute tuned in,
Mm-hmm.
fully connected with source, and for some of us, for me it was a struggle. I had to learn and fail and do all these crazy things, and
Right.
and it is what it is. It is the
Yeah.
way we get to where we are.
Yeah. I feel that it's such a personal journey to travel with source,
Right, right,
and he takes us right where we're at, right?
right,
We don't
right,
we don't have to change anything to be with him, and he takes us wherever we're at, whether we're in a low place or a high place or in the middle. You can come to him, but
right,
it's your choice. You know what I
right,
mean? It's
right.
your own choice. Some people go, yeah, I don't need him. But then they realize I'm a fool, because that's the most foolish thing to say, is that you don't need source.
Yeah.
Um, I hate to tell you, but I've met some very, very wealthy people that did great for themselves materially, and they don't have that connection. And
Right.
it's sad to see. I'm like, how come? I mean, well, you think you were lucky or whatever. I don't
Right.
believe in luck. I believe in everything but luck. Faith is my thing. I got this far on my faith.
Right. Right. Well, and of course you've had experience as a great teacher, because something will happen and you probably sometimes make the wrong decision.
Oh
You
yeah,
learn from it, right?
yep,
And
yep.
then you're a little bit stronger each time.
Hmm.
And I always say that these crises we have are basically designed to make us strong.
Of
So
course.
we have these crazy things happen in our lives, whether it's big or just little, and we get better at handling them
Hmm.
as we gain experience, knowledge,
Completely,
open-mindedness. Yeah.
completely.
And they
Yeah,
are definitely lessons. Like I always say, the lesson is going to, they're going to up the amps on the lesson.
Yeah.
until you learn it. Okay,
Yes.
so if you keep repeating the same mistake over and over and over, and the same thing kind of keeps happening, and you're like, why does this keep happening? Well, that might be a lesson there.
Mhm.
And if you can step back and learn the lesson, it'll go away.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't get that. And, I'm one of them. I sometimes have to be, smacked a little bit to
Yeah.
see what's going on out there. So,
And that's all right too. I
yeah,
mean, we all learn at our own pace, you know?
right,
And
right,
that's the beautiful thing to me about Source is that I told you before the interview, I lost my parents
right,
when I was pretty a toddler. By the time I was a toddler, I was orphaned, and I knew that there was something bigger than me, and I latched on. Now, of course, I'm a baby, the understanding isn't there, but there was an awareness that if I didn't believe in something bigger than me, even as a child, that I was going to be perpetually drowning, you know,
right, right,
and that's why I love him. That's why I love and have followed Source as best as I can,
right, right,
because he became my father. He became my father, my mother, everything I lacked in my life. He gave to me, and he embodied it. Um, and coming from that place of just so broken and so hurt, I understood there's only one, and it's him, and it's not me. Um, and when my world crashed as a baby, and people will look at me like, oh, come on, right? Wait a minute. Don't you think that as children, we are the most aware? And we haven't been desensitized yet. We're not jaded, right? And I can't tell you how many times I know as a child I was protected.
wow,
There were things that could have happened. Bad things happened to me. You don't have a mom and dad. There goes your defense, your protection. So I fell into some things, some bad things. I was, sexually abused,
mhm,
and I fell into, bad hands and stuff like that. But it was like I wasn't alone. I knew he was with me all along. And it wasn't until years later, when I was like about 2021, I went to a counselor, and she told me, she like validated what I believed as a kid, right? She validated it, and she said, well, that, Jesus was with you every time somebody hurt you, taking it there, so you weren't alone in that space. And I cried like a baby because I'd known. I was like, oh wow, like she says, you knew that. And I was like, yeah, I did actually. So I've been able to come up from really bad situations because I've known he's held my hand
right,
all all this time. I didn't always walk with him because we do leave the path, and we
right.
strike out on our own, and we think, so it hasn't all been a bed of roses.
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
I, I can't even imagine. I mean, I just lost my parents in 2020.
Oh,
And all right, so I'm an adult, right? Or supposedly an adult.
yeah,
It was brutal, brutal.
I can't
And I
imagine.
can't even imagine as a little kid what you must have gone through.
Well, I'm the baby of 8, so I have 7 siblings, and what's crazy is that they still look at me as, oh, you were a baby, you didn't go through anything, you came out unscathed. And I'm like, you have no idea. It's because I don't have the recollections of like my oldest brother who was 15 when our parents passed away.
Right,
um, just because I don't have those
right,
memories
right,
doesn't mean I wasn't over here feeling stuff and acquiring my own memories and my own point of view.
right, right.
It got
Yeah.
to be so messed up in my head, Sue, me trying to make sense of all this, that I had to use my writing gift and write a book about it.
Oh,
Be-
did you?
yeah, I did. I had to put it down on paper. And the way I can describe it, I was able to anchor all those memories and nail them down on paper and get them out of myself
Yeah,
because they were choking me. I was starting
yeah,
to feel choked. And people would tell me all the time, people that knew me, they would be like, man, that's an incredible story. You need to
right.
share it.
Yeah,
And finally I listened and I thought, well, I'm a writer. I like to write. Let me write my own story. And I did, and it healed me. I did self-healing because Source would take me to certain places, like have me revisit certain places in my childhood that I had blocked and write about them. And then as I wrote, I healed,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, the power of the written word is, you know,
It,
incredible.
it
But,
must have been a big catharsis to get
oh,
that out. When
yes,
it was probably done, you probably felt like the weight of the world had come off your
yes,
shoulders.
yes,
Yeah.
I did. And as
Yeah.
a creative being,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I felt like my creative flow was like this river. I could picture a river of my creativity. And in the middle of it was this story that had to be told. And it looked like a log laying across it and cutting off the flow. Right. And I felt like that. It got to the point where I couldn't write anything else
Right.
until I wrote this
Right.
thing.
Right. Right.
And it was cool because my kids were little and they were watching me go
Right.
through this. Like they knew the story,
Right.
but then they started seeing, oh man, so it's becoming like it's coming alive now because mom's putting it to paper. And they would, come over and read over my shoulder. Even though they were little, they were, I let them
Yeah.
be part of that process.
Yeah.
They saw me. There were times where I was writing about something so dark that I would just get up from my computer, go lay on my bed in fetal position and cry. And then they would come and just, oh, mama, we love you and stuff like that. I mean, they were part of my healing too,
Right. Right.
So
Right. Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
I really didn't expect, I didn't know your background, honestly. I didn't hear that
yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
And I'm very sad for you, but it seems like you
It's
came
all
out
good.
strong. You came out
It,
strong.
well, I'll tell you why I came out strong was because I finally came to peace with it. Because I realized one thing, how we all choose our assignments before we come down here, right? And when you accept your responsibility, you accept what you accepted, right? I chose to come here as this in this situation. And I came to first of all, I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive my parents. I was very angry in my 20s. The anger, the rage started coming out, right? And then as I started doing that healing, I would, I would ask daddy, so how come this happened? How come you let my parents die? How come you took my parents away? And he would show me, um, he would show me the scene behind the scenes of things I didn't
Mm,
know, and then
wow.
one day I realized that it was not in the contract, so to speak, the soul contract, whatever you want to call it. It was not in the contract for my parents to be a part of my life. And the minute I
Wow.
accepted that, I went, wow. And I sat there and went, okay. So they brought me here and that was fulfilled and that was their part of my life. As soon as everything left me, all the anger, all the, boo hoo hoo, all of that, a lot of the brokenness left when I realized, okay, so that they weren't meant to be here. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's all right. Uh, I've had, I've had, um, I've had times like that in my life where I've gone back and gone, well, how come that, how come my mama died? God, how come you took my mama away? And he showed me she didn't want to be here. She was very sick at the end of her life. And my father was fighting for her. I mean,
Mm,
because those two were lovebirds, and my father just was fighting for her. And all of a sudden, he couldn't fight anymore. Her time was done, and understanding that was like, oh, so it's not God's fault. People blame God, people blame Source for everything, right? Everything. And it's like, yeah, but we are in charge here. We are put here and we are pretty much free will is crazy, right?
right. Right.
But at the end of the, and sometimes our actions, our decisions tie his hands up, and he can't do it. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
he's not going to violate his law, or, he put us here to be in charge, to
Right.
run things, And then when things go bad, who do we blame? The first one I've really, really, and like, hey, that's not my problem. I told you not to do that, but hey, you just wanted to, it's like he's our parent. When our kids have messed up, who do they blame? Most of the time, and we're like, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I tell you, really?
Yeah. It's so true. It sounds like you took responsibility, though. Like you had a broader knowledge already, though.
Mm-hmm,
You kind of
mm-hmm.
knew how things work down here. But like once you saw that it wasn't someone's fault, if you will, it was a
Right.
decision, and you kind of like took responsibility. It sounds like your life might have changed for the better. I'm thinking like that again, that lightness maybe was coming out.
Oh yeah, no, I completely, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that happened in my 20s, in my
Wow.
early 20s, because
Right.
because it, I left I left my uncle's home. Okay, so after my parents died, we had 5 relatives living up here from my father's side of the family, and they picked some of us, and then my 3 oldest brothers, they left in South America, so we haven't seen each other since.
Wow.
And I went to live at one of my uncle's house. He's the so my father was the baby, he was the second youngest, and he took me in. I went to live in Florida. So I came to the US in 76, and I was itty bitty, a 6 year old, just having to start over. And I remember having to kind of like, and I remember doing this on the airplane, Sue, okay, 6 years old. And I'm going, okay, there's certain things I have to put away that I could get away down here, like being the baby of the family. Like there were certain behaviors
Right.
to
Right.
where I'm getting on this plane and I'm having to close those windows. Like that time of my life is over because I'm headed to destination unknown. I didn't know these people. I met them one time and
Wow.
they were relatives. That's all I knew. And off I went on an airplane by myself. May 7th, 1976 is when I came.
Wow.
And it was like the plane ride was one of those, I don't even remember being scared. It
Yeah.
was like, and I knew there was an angel next to me, and I've told Elena this story, and now we think it was her.
Oh wow, how
Yeah,
exciting.
there was, so I'm not a big talker. I'm a big talker if I know you, but if new situations, I'm watching everything, right? So I'm sitting next to this one girl, little girl, my age. Her name was Josephine, and she talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. 3 hours from Bogota to Miami International, okay? And this girl talk, 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 talk. But by the time we landed, it was like, that's it, it's over, She kept me entertained the whole time. And when I told Elena that story, I was like, going, she told me one day, she goes, Mom, I was there. And I believe
Wow.
her. I
Wow.
was, and she talks more than I do. So yeah.
How interesting. I'm getting chills.
Oh
As
yeah.
you said that, I'm
Yeah.
getting chills.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm telling you. So I'm this little kid in a new family, don't know these people, and I'm having to make my life over. Um, Learn English, went to school, just having to grow up so quickly, because I really couldn't be the baby anymore. And then at my uncle's house, they made me the oldest girl because they had my 2 cousins. And so now so I went from being the baby in Colombia to now I'm the oldest responsible
Mm.
girl in Latino households. Everything falls on the oldest girl. And so I played that role too in my life of the older kid with got blamed for everything. If things went south, it was my fault. All of it.
It's good practice for being a parent, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but those were some, the time, like from the time I came to the US and having to, like I said, I knew I wasn't alone, and then they put me in Catholic school because the whole family's Catholic, and
Oh,
as a kid, I'm telling you, Sue, I never went to sleep because having that tragedy hit your family,
yeah,
then I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't afford to go to sleep, right? And so I remember being a very inquisitive kid in Catholic school. I would always ask the priest. The priest was telling us one day that the Pope, he's like God and all this stuff, but he's also a man. And I raised my hand one day. I was in the fifth grade, and I said, "Okay, so you say we have to go to confession, right? Because we're all sinful and all this stuff, right?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, if the Pope's a man, who does he confess to?" And this priest was like, he never answered. And I
yeah,
would, I would always come up like that against,
yeah,
the religious system. I always like wanted to know, what are you talking about? This
yeah,
doesn't make sense to me.
yeah,
But also I can say there was a good thing about religion because it did introduce me to Yeshua, Jesus, Sananda.
right, right,
Okay. And I remember being in the fifth grade again and falling in love with all the stories about the miracles and all of that, right? And I remember the nun, her name was Sister Mary Valentine or something, very Catholic. I don't know why I still remember her name, but I remember I was always raising my hand like, did he really do that? Oh my God, that's so awesome. I want to, get to know this guy. I was
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
And I remember there was the one parable of the 10 lepers and where he healed them and only one came back and said thank you. And I remember going in my head
I'm
going,
getting chills.
I want to be that dude that said thank you. I'm gonna always be like that.
Right, right,
And I was like this little kid. And but yeah, I so very awake as a child, very inquisitive, but also very lonely, because I didn't get to grow up with my own siblings.
right, right,
um, we're pretty much strangers to this day. I found out recently through source directives that they're not part of my soul tribe, and that's why I had to part ways. But
right,
it wasn't tragic. It was
right,
like,
right.
because as a little kid, I also had recurring dreams.
Ooh,
One of several was I would be so. Remember, I'm the youngest of 8 in Colombia, and during the time where we were being separated, uh, and after, even into my teens in the US, I would have the same dream. And it would be me standing on the banks of a river, and there's this boat, and my 7 siblings are on the boat, and they're pulling away, and I'm not with them. And I'm running up and down that bank going, wait, wait, don't leave. And then I would wake up like, oh, they're not here. Right.
right, right,
And now that I see it, it was like just like my parents weren't meant to be part of my growing up years, then my siblings, that wasn't meant to be either.
wow, wow. That's a, and how about your cousins? Are you close with them?
No, no, I'm
Oh,
not. No,
wow, okay.
the my extended family, I had
Yeah.
to leave. I had to leave because I'm just I'm just too open-minded. I'm just I have a voice. I grew up in the Latino culture where they silence women's voices a lot. We
Yeah,
don't really count except to be pretty and
yeah,
and sex symbols and all. I love the Latino culture. That's one thing I can't stand, and that's why I'm glad that I didn't have to bring up my girls in that nonsense.
right, right,
I'm glad that even though they didn't have my extended family to grow up with and stuff like that, then it exposed them to something different, like
right, right,
how to be a beautiful woman with brains and,
right,
self-empowerment and things
right,
like that
right,
I wasn't taught. I had to
right.
learn this all on my own.
It's really impressive what you've done. I didn't know your story. Okay. It's so impressive what you've done without really true role models.
No,
I
it's
mean,
zero. Exactly.
yeah, it's
It's like
crazy. Yeah,
him.
yeah.
That's it.
So it sounds like you said you had recurring dreams, but it sounds like you also spoke with source directly.
Yeah.
And you talked about in your 20s you were angry and all of that. Have you always heard or known, had a open communication, or when did that start and how did it start?
It started as a kid,
Right.
and it got stronger. Uh, well, the dreams. I've always had dreams. I've always been the big dreamer that I can wake up and tell you all about it. If I'm
Right.
allowed to remember a dream,
Yeah.
there's been dreams that it's like, and then also I've been gifted like Elena with the gift of interpretation, so I can also interpret, some dreams, not all,
Right.
just whatever he allows. You know what I mean? And but I remember the dreams have gotten stronger. Like whenever I would be pregnant with any one of my given kids, then I would like get more dreams where I would have to sit down and go, wait, I gotta write this down and
Right.
stuff like
Right.
that. So there's been time in my life, and there's been times in my life where it's been stronger, but not like now. It's like this is the strongest it's ever been,
Right. Right.
But
Right.
prior to the acceleration and the ascension, I was always talking and hearing from him. I was never one of these. Okay, so going back to, okay, I don't have a father or a mother. I better listen to somebody.
Right. Right.
Right? Because that's what I told my kids growing up. I'm like, y'all want to know why I love Source so much? Is because he is the only one I got. My
Right.
family turned their backs on me. I had to leave uh, a lot of toxic stuff behind. And so it was just me and him. And he's the
Wow.
only one that's never failed me, you know?
Wow. Wow. I'm still blown away by your story. It's incredible. And of course, now that I know that, you've had your own children, you've homeschooled them,
Yeah, yeah,
and they've become strong, confident, very tuned in individuals.
yeah.
It's amazing what you've accomplished.
Thank you.
It really is. Like, you should be so proud of yourself.
Thank you.
Really taking what most people would have, that huge adversity, they would have probably gone, down some dark alleyways, you know what I mean? Like
No,
in their lives, and done
yeah.
things or been in circumstances that were ugly and probably never made it back out,
No, exactly. The book, it's funny because out of 8 of us, I broke out and wrote a book about it. And I wrote what happened to me without holding anything back. It was my story. It's what happened to me. There's a meme that says, for writers, if you don't want me to write anything bad about you, well, then you should have treated me better.
It's really true, right?
If you want me to,
Yeah.
talk you up and tell you were my hero, then you better have been my hero,
Yeah. Yeah.
But I remember when, so my siblings know that this book is out there.
Right.
And another reason why I had to leave them behind was because they've not dealt with the pain like I did. I was brave enough, or I'm not saying all of them. As far as I know, they're in different stages of dealing with that past, And me, I came in, I buried what I knew in a book and, went on with my life.
Right.
And that's a big difference because,
right.
I'm not stuck to that past. Yeah,
right.
I
right.
can talk about it, because I've healed,
Right.
and I use my story to help others heal, because that was the only reason why I wrote that. When Source was calling me to write my book, I was like, okay, I sat down with him and I said, okay, before I write anything, if you can use this book to heal one person, I did my job. And
it's perfect.
Yeah. And
right.
he's gone on and used me in ways I don't even know who's read this book, but
Yeah.
people tell me, every once in a while I'll hear about it. But as far as dealing with the past, that was another reason why I had to, leave my siblings. Not only are they not part of my tribe, they're just, you can't hang with people that are still like, oh, we can't talk about it. Oh, why? Well, why not? Why can't you talk about it? Let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about what you went through, because that's how you heal.
It is how you heal.
Yeah.
You have to, like, sometimes you can, like, this is a major trauma in your and their lives. This is major.
Yeah.
And if you don't talk about it, how can you address it? Some things you can blow off or you can heal in different ways, but that's a major trauma.
Yeah, exactly. And right. I feel, and as, like I said, there's a disconnect also because me being the baby, then they're like, well, you don't really know anything. So that when we've gotten together and talked, it's like there's a disconnect because they'll talk about people that I have no idea who they are.
Right,
And I
right.
don't really care because I mean, you know what I mean? It wasn't
Yeah,
meant to be. And that's why I'm
yeah,
not sad. One of my siblings got irritated with me because, "Oh, how come, you don't want to be part of the family?" And my mom like, the family bond was broken, dude. And I love you. And, I know you're my sister and everything. And, I have deep respect for you, but there's some things that, you just,
right.
when you know who you are, you just, love you, but I gotta go.
Well, at this point, they're probably strangers,
Don't
and
completely.
your
Yeah.
lives are so different that there's no common ground anymore.
No,
It's been
no.
so long. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
Wow.
and that's why I know Daddy gave me my own family because he did. I mean, I was ready for it. It was something that I was scared to, but then the healing came, and then it opened me up to the
Right.
possibility of having kids.
Right.
And I'm glad I listened, to put it this way. I'm
Yeah.
glad I listened and didn't, decide to be so scared and, just dumping everything into a career. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but that's what I thought was going to keep me from pain. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Keeping busy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So in this case, the trauma was so big it needed to be addressed. So you could have skirted that and gone about being busy. You would be a totally different person today,
Oh, I
though.
know. I know
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
know. I wouldn't have what I have
Right.
now,
Right.
you know? And I look back and I'm like, when people tell me, like you did such a good job and stuff like that, I always give credit where credit's due, honey, because I listened to Daddy. I let
Right.
him
Right.
be my daddy so that I could be a good parent to my kids,
Right.
or the kids, the parent that they deserve type
Right.
deal.
Right.
But I couldn't do it if I had not healed first.
Right.
you
Exactly.
know and I tell
Exactly.
I tell people all the time, yeah, thank you so much, but there was two bigger hands in this guiding
Right.
me. I remember sitting with my kids whenever they were younger, and I would be like, Daddy, I don't know what to do here, but you better show up because I don't know what to do here.
Right.
It's out
Right.
of my range of experience, all of that. And he would come in just like clockwork, just,
Right. Right.
and like I said, I can sit here and talk about him all day long.
Well, it sounds like you've always had faith. You've always had that connection, and you generally will follow the,
Yeah,
you know, what do you want to call it? The intuition, the guidance you're given,
yeah,
whatever you want to call that. So
yeah,
like there's been places you probably ignored it because you wanted to do the other thing, but you've always come back to following what sources said for you to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, it's gotten me in trouble with church,
Yeah.
because
So I hear.
it's like, Daddy, what are you doing?
Yeah.
The church was a trip for me because I would go there to be the nice little church person,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then it was like, this was crazy, okay? So I started going to church. Now, I'm shy, okay? One on one, great. But like I told you, in a big group setting, I'm a shy person, right? So here I am in church, right? The music was great. And one Sunday, I hear Daddy dance for me,
Ooh.
dance for you. I'm like, and I love to dance. Okay. I grew up with all the Latin music and stuff. And he was like, dance with me. And I'm like, oh my God, dance with me. What are these people going to think? Right. And I was at the point of exercising my faith where Daddy wanted me to just make a fool out of myself. Just, will you make a fool out of yourself for me? And I was like, okay. So I started stepping out. I would dance in the back where nobody could see me.
Yeah.
And then eventually it was like, dance up here because I want you to communicate things. I want you to like be a prophetic dancer.
Right.
And I was like, Daddy, this is so against my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sure enough, little by little, and then I started dancing in church openly, and people would come up to me. There was several times people would come up to me after a service and they would be like, man, it was like there was angels back and forth and all this stuff. And Daddy told me one day, he was like, you're helping them see what's going on up here during that service.
Right.
You're like you're telling them in through dance what's going on here.
Right.
I almost fell down. I was like, really? Because it feels really uncomfortable.
and you're inspiring them, like maybe some of them secretly wanted to dance, or
Yeah.
they're uptight or whatever. So you inspired them to be more free and open. Yeah.
And then of course, you can't, who the sun sets free is free indeed. And when you're free, there's no putting you in a box anywhere, Yeah. So I started in church, I started dancing and being a dancer, but then Daddy wanted me to start using my voice. And that was hard. Ooh. Because I'm like, I've been silenced all my life.
Right.
I'm a baby of the family where I don't count. I come up here and I still didn't count at my uncle's house because I'm this young Latina with a voice. I knew I had a voice because it would irritate my cousins. Shut up, you're so annoying. And I was like, and I'd get all offended and all butthurt about it. But then it was like, I realized, as I grew up, I was like, no, it's not this. It's, you know what I mean? It's me. It's my brilliance. It's my spirit that was bugging out. And I grew up being called crazy. That was another thing. I was a very lonely kid. So I tried to go to school. And if you talk to me, I talk to you. If you were nice to me, I was nice to you. Right. But then I had such an imagination that my cousins or friends or acquaintances at school were like, man, you're so crazy. What are you talking about? You're so crazy. And I was like, I don't know. I just always thought out of the box, outside of the box, Yeah.
And well, maybe you were, but it's in a good way. It's an inspiring way.
Yeah.
It's not like you're doing erratic things. You're doing loving things,
Yeah. And let's see, that's the thing. It was like, despite everything that was going on at home, I was a happy kid at school because school was where I could be myself.
Right.
And isn't it crazy because you go to school and you can't be yourself? Yeah. Well, I couldn't be myself at home.
Right.
So school I was actually the nerdy kid that couldn't wait to go to school. And then it was like the older I got, I had no freedom. It was just couldn't do anything. So Fridays was kind of a sucky time because I wasn't allowed anywhere to go anywhere. So it was like, oh, I got to go home for 2 days.
Yeah.
But, it kept me out of a lot of trouble. It kept me out of a lot of nonsense that I didn't need. Right. Yeah,
exactly.
And I only see it now as an adult, having raised my own kids and what I did for them,
Right.
But I thank Daddy for having put me with my uncle. Because even though he was gruff and he didn't understand me, we really didn't know each other, very distant. I mean, he gave me opportunities that my siblings didn't have.
Right.
And one of those things was to travel. And we traveled a lot. We traveled in Europe because we got to live in Germany for 3 years.
Wow.
So I was happy because I love to travel. I've traveled all my life, I love traveling, and he gave me that gift. And I feel like it was, how Daddy will make up things in your life for terrible losses. And I feel like those years in Europe were a gift from Daddy. Like, he knows what I went through and didn't put me, in the best of circumstances, but what came out of there, it was travel. And I have memories of my years in Europe that I turned into stories for a second book that I published.
Oh, great. That's amazing. Well, I was just getting a message that the best is yet to come for you. So
thank you.
Yes. So you've turned, you've gotten lemons, you've turned it into lemonade, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now you're going to have something better than lemonade. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. And I love lemonade.
Yeah. It's going to be lemonade mixed with tea.
You're
better.
I want to meet you in person, by the way. We should get together.
Yeah. That
but
would be great.
that would be
Anytime.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I, I have to, one of the things that I've always been drawn to is like, I love children. However, I'm called to the young people because it was when I was a teenager that I felt the loneliest because
Right. Right.
at my uncle's house, my aunt didn't get me and she didn't want to get me.
Right.
So my uncle really wasn't there. He was working all the time at the hospital. My cousins, so like I said, I was lonely at school and
Right.
at home. And so I started journaling and I turned to writing. And I knew it was a gift that daddy gave me uh, to help me because otherwise, man, this head was going to explode. I couldn't express.
Right. Right.
I'm a writer and I can't express, I can't tell anybody anything, right? So
Right.
I turned to writing and it's served me all my life. It really has. It was that one vehicle that I had that would connect me to him too, because
Right.
man, I would just like, and the older I got, when I was going through difficult times in my marriage, it was me and him and these journals. I've got like a whole cabinet of journals that I filled out
Right.
for
Right.
years. And yeah, that just communicating with him all the time you know, when I thought I found the love of my life.
Right.
And it was good when it started. We were married 25 years. And the best thing that came out of our marriage was our 4 kids
Of
and
course.
our
Yes.
grandchildren.
Yes.
But we had trouble because, um, first of all, he was 20 years older than me, you know. So it worked at first, but then we started drifting apart.
Right. Right.
And he also came from a troubled past. His his childhood was as traumatic as mine. And so the best way I can put it to summarize it is I know that daddy put us together because we both knew he was a believer.
Right. Right.
He followed Jesus and everything and loved Jesus. But we knew that these two broken people were put together to make a home for our kids and give them what we never had, which was
Exactly.
that stability that we both
Exactly.
craved that neither of us had as
Right.
children.
Right.
And we did that. We managed to give that to our children,
Right.
even though it didn't work out. Our kids know mom and dad, they had our backs. They
It's,
loved.
it's actually, as perfect as it can be for a divorce situation, right?
Exactly,
That,
exactly.
you have the common goal of really it's for the kids' benefit. It's not just about you and he. And
No,
so it sounds like it was as amicable and as like as much teamwork as you could muster up for
yeah,
there. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
And
good.
one thing we knew with each other while we were raising our kids, because he would go to work and so I could stay home. We managed on one paycheck. There's so many myths about homeschooling, especially now with more people having to turn to that as an
Right,
alternative.
right, right,
And for that, I'm thankful for the shutdown because
right,
it really opened up people's eyes as to what they were allowing in their kids' lives, right? But those years of homeschooling were a trip because nobody was doing it. It was just us, right? Our families thought we were nuts, really. And then, uh, so as the years progress and everything, the kids are growing up and everything. Um, and we had just made up our minds. This is the source directives for our family. You see what
right,
I'm saying?
right.
We were
Yeah,
following source directives all the way.
right.
And now that everybody's talking about it and it's a movement now and everything, I just get so tickled and I love it because I'm like, all these people had to do what I did.
Right, right, right. You
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 know?
were a pioneer there. because
Yes.
because not many people, like, I didn't know much about it. Like, there were people in my town that homeschooled and I didn't understand it or know much about it.
Right. And it's
And
funny, it's funny that you use the word pioneer
yeah.
because years ago daddy showed me that.
Oh,
Daddy
that
showed
you were a
me that.
pioneer.
Yes, he
Yeah.
told me that very much so. And I was like, well, wow, I didn't see that coming. And see what happened was we actually even so my kid's dad, back in the mid 90s when we were starting to have our kids, he started having these dreams. And it was daddy talking to him. to sell out everything, buy a trailer, an RV, and head out west. Okay. I knew it was daddy talking. Okay. And he was fighting daddy all the way. He was like, no, I've got, I've got a great job. I've got this. I've got that. No.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
more he fought it, the more the dreams would come.
Right.
No. And I remember Elena and her second sister were already around. They were itty bitty. We made a trip to Florida, and it was around Christmas time. And we left our kids with a friend of ours, and he and I went out on a date. And this is where, if we were at the point where we were trying to figure out, he was already deciding to do it, but he wasn't sure, right? He wanted one more word. And we were, so we were on a beach in Florida, Fort Myers, Florida.
Oh, yeah.
It was at night, and we were watching the ocean, and all of a sudden we both heard that it was time. And he said, "Go west, young man." And I looked at him and I said, "Did you just hear what I heard?" He goes, "Go west, young man." I said, "That's what I heard."
I'm getting chills. So you both heard that with your ears at the same time.
Yes.
Totally getting chills. Totally.
Yeah. And we grabbed hands, and it was like, holy crap. Right.
Yeah.
And so that trip, we went back home, and of course we're in church. We share the vision with another pastor, with our pastor back then. And he was like, that can't be. He didn't want us to go because we were helping him with his work. Right. And then that's when our problems really began, because I was full on to see him carry this vision. Right. And he was pissed. He was like, "No, God, you're crazy. God, no, no, no." And I would look at him like, and we would get into these fights about this. Right. And finally, one day, Daddy told me, because I would get my feelings hurt, like, "Wait a minute, didn't you want a supportive wife? I mean, most men would love a wife like me that supports them in their source directives, right?"
Yeah,
no. And he would get so mad, and it was ugly. It would turn ugly. But it was during those times that I grew the most.
Well, you'd think that you both heard from God, source, at the same time, the same message. You're not making it up. What was the big deal? Like, execute the plan. But it is scary. Yeah. It's going into the unknown. It's like, no plan. You just did it. So finally you did it.
And here's the crazy part, Sue.
So there's crazier than that?
Yeah. So, so we're on board, right?
Yeah.
And he retires from his job, and we sell all our possessions. Meanwhile, we have to deal with family. His family thinks y'all done lost your mind. My own sister's calling me, "My husband and I think you joined a cult. Did you?" "No, dude. Are you sure? Do you want us to go down there? Because you don't sound okay." These people, right? So, but we did not let them, stop us for anything in the world. But the marriage, we started having really real problems, because I would get attacked. The dark ones did not want this happening. And the more the attacks came against me, I knew that we were supposed to be out there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we finally got everything ready. We got the trailer, we got the truck, we sold all our possessions. We had 3 little kids, and we headed out west. And it was a scary thing, but it was also like, wow, we're actually doing this, right? And we traveled a lot. And then, but he wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. He was just hated it. Just the whole thing was like, I left this for that. It was kind of like when the Israelites left Egypt, and they're going. And it was like that was hard. So we came out here. We came out to Las Vegas. No, so we went out one trip. We came back east. And when we came back east, we weren't supposed to be here, and everything went wrong. That could go wrong, because you don't go and decide to go this way and then retrace your steps and come back. Right. And And then he would lose job after job. We would get, sent over here and go there. It was tumultuous, right?
Right.
But then it was like, I knew we're not back where we're supposed to be. We're not back. So we went 1 year like that, just constantly him not following source directives.
Right.
And it was awful. It was like, but the marriage was very shaky because he would take it out on me.
Right.
Beautiful thing about it was I learned the most grace. I learned to give him grace like never before. There were times where he was just so mean and everything. And you know what Daddy would have me do? Close your mouth. Don't say it.
Wow.
He's mad at me. And I'd be like, and I'm like, no. And Daddy'd be like, sit down. This one, we're duking it out. Me and him.
Yeah.
You're just a spectator. You watch this,
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it was during those years where I grew the most. Those years traveling around and relying on him where we grew the most, And then we ended up in Vegas. We ended up staying here. And then it took another turn. But what I wanted to say through all that was, we left our comfort. We left all, and I give him credit because he did, even though he did, scratching and biting and punching,
kicking and screaming, right?
Yeah, no, he will, and he's gone on, and I know he's happy up there, and we talk to him all the time. We see him, we see traces of him, but it was a beautiful thing because we both grew where nothing else grows you like that in your faith. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there were times we didn't have anybody to talk to. We wouldn't have any friends or anything because it was like, you guys are crazy. I mean, even our own families were like, yeah, that's nice, but you guys are really irresponsible. I'm like, what? What do you mean irresponsible? We're doing source directives. They didn't, of course, nobody's going to see it like that, right?
Yeah. They just think you've got an erratic lifestyle, especially with kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, you're so irresponsible.
Yeah.
Traveling around like gypsies. What are you doing? And I'm like,
yeah.
But this is our home. You understand? It's like, oh no, you need a house to have these. I'm like, where is that written that you gotta have this? No, we are their stability. We are their world. It doesn't matter. We could be, in a van. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But that was the norm, right? No, you settle down. You settle down and do the right thing. And I heard that from my family. He heard it from his in a roundabout kind of way. And we were like, wow, people were really mad when that happened.
Yeah. They feel like you're not responsible. Yeah. And on the other hand, you're doing what you're told to do, which is the ultimate responsibility. Yeah. And it had to be hard. I mean, to give all your stuff away or sell it and to leave that like probably a more spacious house for an RV of some sort.
35-foot RV.
Yeah, I don't know. But now I see people living that way all the time. And they, I talk to them. I don't get it myself, but I've never done it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
listen, those years of living in an RV really taught us that we can live with far less things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My kids were actually spend most of their day outside playing, you know?
Yeah.
They had the kind of childhood, a friend of mine described it because she grew up in the 50s. She's like, your kids grew up like in the 50s, not in the 2000s.
Right.
And it was because dad was at work, mom was with them, and homeschooling them and all that, but they had a childhood.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you were both there to support them and help them and guide them where, unfortunately, we've got 2 income families. The mom and the dad have to work. The kids are in school and they come home, maybe to an empty house. There's nobody there. Like the mother and the father are tired when they get home. Yeah. They can't really spend quality time. It's hard.
And then the family suffers. The family is what
the
gets
family
sacrificed.
suffers. Yeah.
And now that I see it, I was very fortunate because, I was raised the same way. My
Right.
aunt stayed home, her husband went to work. When we got home, she was always home. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And that leaves a mark on you.
Right.
I hear other, 80s kids, because we're 80s kids. I heard so many of my classmates, latchkey kids,
Right.
nobody home when they got
Right.
home. That was not my experience.
Right.
And to this day, I think that was one of the best things that my uncle and his wife did for
Right.
me.
Right.
You know, I mean, I didn't know what it was like, but when I hear about it, it's like, ooh, that's terrible, to hear somebody my age go, man, I wondered if my parents even cared about me. They were so busy, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And and when you're a teen, even though, teens are the way they are, and,
Yeah.
because I raised four and you raised two, but they need that. They need that presence,
Yes, they
even though
totally
they
do.
they need somebody there constantly,
Right.
you
Right.
know. And I tell my kids that have kids now, it's like, enjoy your little ones, because you think they need you now, they need you more when they're young adults,
Yeah.
they really
Yeah.
do. And the
Yeah.
reason why I brought up the being drawn to young people, is
Right.
because I remember that loneliness. I remember the not being able to turn to anybody, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And I've taught youth groups, in church and stuff, back in Georgia, because uh, they want answers. They're okay. You get to a point in your church experience as a young person, and you become a young adult, and you've heard all the Moses and Noah stories. At some point, you need some truth to get told to you, to be told to you.
Right. Right.
And I remember Elena was a baby, and I had just come back from a trip to Brazil. Now, Daddy took me to Brazil in 1993, and I didn't. Elena wasn't around yet because she was born in '94. But Daddy took me to Brazil to heal me. He did like open heart surgery in Brazil, and the reason why he took me to Brazil was because that's where my mother's from. My mother was Brazilian, and so I went there for 2 weeks with a church group, and it was one of the most amazing things. So I came back. I came back a Jedi
That's
from
so
that
cool.
trip.
That's
Yeah,
so
and my
cool.
husband could even tell when I came back from that trip, he looked at me and he was like, "You're no longer that scared little girl I met. Now you're this warrior." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But I knew something deep had happened to me in
Right.
Brazil,
Right. Right.
and just it's just so happens, and I still have a picture of this little girl that during one of the services there, she would come up and throw herself at me and just hug me, right? And just all through the service, she did that, right? And I took a picture of her. And to me, nobody else seems to think so, but I know that was Elena because it looks like Elena to me, right?
How
I
cool
think,
is that?
and it's like, and I told Elena, I met you in Brazil when even before we had a thought of having you. So I remember making that connection with that little girl. And the last time she came up and hugged me, I looked up and I asked Daddy for a child, because prior to that I didn't want any.
Right. Right.
And I remember my last night in Brazil, um, I was ready to have kids. It was like the healing came. I was whole. I was restored. And then my last night in Brazil, I remember laying in the bed of the room where I was staying at, and I put my hands on my stomach, and I said, "Daddy, whatever children you want to give me, I dedicate them back to you now
Wow.
before they come." I
Wow.
said, "With the one condition that you teach me what to do with them, because I'm at a loss here and you know my past."
Right.
And then I remember saying that night as I lay on my bed with my hands on my stomach. And then when I got back home, a few weeks later, I was pregnant with Elena.
Wow. How exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
How exciting. Well, it's even more exciting that you were consciously ready.
Yes.
Like we had talked before we started recording that you were afraid, like you didn't want to have kids because you were afraid that
Yeah.
your experience would be repeated. And
Mhm.
you really must have done some great healing.
Oh
So
man,
that's so
I didn't want to do to them what was done to me.
Right. Right.
you know, and in order for that to happen, you got to get it right first inside of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it
Yeah.
doesn't happen any other way that I can think of. And then there's this beautiful thing about daddy, that whatever you didn't get and you give that to another person, that's also your healing, you know. So for example, I didn't grow up with much affection in my life, you know, and the adults around me were just very cold, very stoic Latinos,
Yeah.
the everything's perfect and fine, but inside everybody's a mess, right? So I knew I didn't want that for my children, but I didn't have that in my experience. So I had to ask daddy, show me how to be affectionate with my children, because I don't have that. And so I remember teaching myself, making myself like, as the kids get older, I'd be like, hugging them and cuddling with them on the couch as we watch a movie. I had to train myself like that, Sue, because it wasn't in my experience. And
Right.
so the more I gave of that I didn't get, that's where the healing came. A lot of people turn it the other way. Oh, I didn't get it. It's not my problem. Blah, blah, blah. You suffer. Well, it's not their fault. That's not their
Right.
fault.
Right. Right.
And true healing comes from that, comes from those places that, like the Bible says, and I love the Bible. I still read it to this day, and I follow it, a lot of what it says. And I know there's a lot of error in it, but I also know that daddy can guide you through the Bible. You know what I mean? And in Psalms, it says that he will make gardens from your desert places. And I'm paraphrasing, but I'm being liberal here. But it really, he will take your desert and make it into a beautiful garden.
Right.
But do you want to? And there's a process involved in that. There's a process in becoming, you know, going from, all right, man, so somebody broke you up and you're messed up, but now you got to leave all that behind, as much as being a victim, right? I tried being a victim, Sue, and it sucked. That victimhood is awful, okay?
I think that's the word I wanted to use earlier. You've taken responsibility and you actively tried to heal your
Mhm,
trauma.
mhm.
Yeah.
Because what's the other alternative? Victim?
Yeah. Victim.
No,
Yeah.
I
And so
that
your
was
whole life you go through being angry,
uh-huh,
resentful, blaming, grumpy, and you don't have an open heart.
no. And that's
And
and who's having fun? Not you. Who's
yeah.
having fun? Not the people that hurt you, because they've forgotten about you,
Yeah.
you know? And I don't know, but one of the biggest things that I learned in church, because I believe uh daddy uses everything. So if you got religion thrown at you and he used it to help you out some way, it counts. You know what I mean?
Right.
Even
Right.
though I cannot stand religion or any of the whole establishment, I do see where daddy came in and used it as a tool to help
Right.
me out,
Right.
right?
Right.
And one of the things that I learned, I was healed in church. I really was. I went to a great counselor, after I told her my whole story. She said, well, you're a walking, talking miracle. You realize that?
You
I was
really
like,
are. You
nobody
really
told
are.
me that. I was like, okay, I guess. And
Yeah.
she said, because look, I've counseled people for over 20 years, and you are in my office. You're this beautiful young woman. You're intelligent. You're amazing. You're talented. And she said, I've counseled other people that have gone through this much compared to what you've gone through and your trauma, and
Right.
here you are.
Right.
She told me, he has kept you. And I looked at her, I said, yeah, you're right.
Right.
And
Right.
he will keep you. He will keep you intact. I can say intact, because, you know, he looks after the orphans and the widows. For a long time, my biggest shame was being an orphan. And I would go to school
Wow.
and pretend that I was this normal kid from a regular family with the two parents that love each other, and I would never let on. It was such a shameful thing to let people know that I was an orphan. So that,
Wow.
yeah, I learned, like, no, you can't, you don't tell people
You can't even control that.
that.
And
But it was like,
Wow.
that was a part of me that was like, no, this is not what we talk about, you know? And and then eventually, of course, that's not good. That would have, if I continued on that route,
Right.
that wasn't going to get me to my
Yeah.
healing, to where I
Yeah.
had to go. So when I started going to counseling and things like that and facing it and realizing, oh, okay, wow, so it's part of my story. Cool. There's no shame in it, right? Then I was healed. My identity
Right.
was healed.
Right. Right.
But as far as I always bring religion up because it's interesting, um, that, so yes, I went through all of this. Daddy used religion in a crazy way, right? And when I was writing my book, I was going, I could have been the most religious person, because I did. I mean, I went to Catholic school and all this stuff, right? And I went to Catholic church every Sunday. My uncle would take us to church, right? And I'm like, I looked up in amazement. I'm like, Daddy, how come there's not one religious bone in my being? And I heard him go, I protected you from even that. I didn't. He protected me from religion. Like, go figure, right?
Well, it would have been one more program that you would have had to overcome. You had a lot to overcome,
Yeah.
and you were able to get from point A to point Z without every stepping stone that we
Yeah.
traditionally take. You
Yeah.
did things out of order. Like you weren't traditional,
No.
but you've done an amazing job. You and I like that. He's protected you from that. That's
He
great.
has. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't attribute it to anything else or anybody else,
Right. Right.
And I know that's why I wanted to bring up why I embraced source directives. Okay.
Right. Right.
Got kicked out of church, one right after the other. All because I wasn't rude. I was just like,
Yeah.
well, you're contradicting yourself, and what you're teaching isn't really sound. I even had the last church that we were kicked out of here in Las Vegas. The man thought that I was coming to take over his church. He even called me a Jezebel.
Whoa.
And he said that, he told my husband back then, you better watch that little woman, because she's a Jezebel and she's trying to control you and blah, blah, blah. And
Wow.
he met with him and told him, don't bring your wife. I need to talk to you about your wife.
Can you even imagine? That is so rude.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad that he was like that, so you didn't have to go back?
No. And so when he came back and I was like, so what happened? We were both laughing. He says, he's actually scared of you. He thinks you're there to take over.
Well, what it is you know more than he does. And the fact that you raised all these questions and he's like, I don't know. I never thought of it that way.
And it's,
how can I control her?
Yes. And the thing is, okay, so that's the thing. Religion versus relationship, right?
Right, right.
And so here's an interesting thing. So we haven't been to church in a long time, right? And it was around 2013. I have a naturopath, and we had just moved into our home, and my girls kept getting headaches and all this stuff, right? And I was like, what do I do? I went to my naturopath, and she says, go get them those EMF necklaces to protect them. And I was like, what is that? She goes, just Google it, right? So I put, it's 2013. I'm Googling it, and I put EMF necklaces. Smarty comes up on Facebook. That's where it took me to. Smarty John Mendez. And I'm like, who's this guy? And I'm like, and then I started reading his posts, and he would make me laugh because, he was hilarious on Facebook. I don't know, were you around back then?
I didn't meet him. I think it was 2017. So I didn't.
Okay. Okay. So this whole time now I'm on him off Facebook, and I decided to follow him. I thought, why not? And he would post and post and post. And it wasn't, and I did not tell Elena about any of this or anything. It's just this guy on Facebook that took me to now I didn't buy anything. I went somewhere else, but I was led to that on purpose. Daddy led me there.
Right, right.
And so it wasn't until the shutdown that he started doing his Facebook lives, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And from the first one, Elena, I hadn't told her about him yet. And I watched the first one and it was so bomb, right? That night I got on the phone with Elena. I said, dude, I gotta tell you about this guy. She goes, who? And I said,
I'm getting chills.
go,
Again.
go on
Yeah.
Facebook and look up on my friends, John Smarty Mendez. And she was like, who's that? I'm like, just go see. I can't tell you anything else. I said, and if you really want to know more, he's doing another Facebook Live tomorrow. So go there. And she goes, oh my God. So she said she was, as soon as she saw the one from the night before, and she said, Mom, I want to listen to this guy tomorrow. And then now it's history, because the next day she was on like, Mom, and after the call, the Zoom, Mom, why didn't you tell me about this guy?
Yeah. Well, I remember when you both started participating, but I didn't know you were related.
Yeah.
Right? It took me a while to figure that out, And then it finally dawned on me, like after I heard a few stories, like, but it was really, really great. Like when we had so many, videos and the lives and people could ask questions. And now, of course, censorship has changed all of that,
It's so great. Listen, I feel like, okay, my son is 24 years old and, he's struggled with it. He's hurt him, because there's been, during those Zoom calls, I'll have him on and everybody can listen.
Yeah.
I don't care, right? I'm that way. And, he struggled, my son, at first, right? And we've talked a lot ever since, right? And it was interesting because the more that we have progressed, all of a sudden I said, son, this is what I tell my son. I said, son, at the end of the day, do you know why I follow him? He goes, okay, tell me. I said, because at the end of the day, he always tells us, go to source.
Right.
Go to source, right?
Right.
Get your connection to source. Yes, I am the way, the truth, and the life, but you got to go to source for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that stumps my son, because it's like, oh, who does he think he is? And all of that. We hear it all from our relatives,
right.
Our friends, and it's like, okay, dude, so at the end of the day, this guy is saying, get your connection right with source.
Right.
Talk to him. Right. Okay. That right there, to me, is it. Okay. If you want to tell anybody about anything, is that he doesn't draw people to himself.
Right.
He draws people where?
Right.
So daddy, God, and then people, when I've told people this, not just my son, they're stumped. They're like,
yeah. Well, most of us, most people, whether they're spiritual healers or they're religious leaders, whatever it is, that it's like ego. I know this, I know that, you got to follow me, blah, 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 buy my stuff. I know everything, blah, blah, blah. And we're used to that. And, a lot of times we have to sort through, are they really good? Do they really know? In this case, we go right to the top. We're asked to go to the top. We're told to do our research. We're told, like, here's the fact, go look it up. Yeah. Go figure out if it's, this is weird. I just got a feather that landed on my computer out of nothing. I just brushed it away and I'm like, wait, that's a feather. Like, where did it come from?
I love it.
I don't know if I can find it. I brushed it away. Well, but anyways, we are told like certain pieces of information and how to check for ourselves, how to think for ourselves, but really to go to the highest source that we have, source, we call him daddy in our group, but to get the answers. Now the answers are really inside, but it's that connection where we're able to discern, the answer.
Listen.
And it's beautiful.
And it's not complicated, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I learned of all the years of studying the Bible is that Yeshua taught so that a little itty bitty kid could understand.
Yeah.
So his ways are simple. They're not simplistic. Yeah. Okay. His ways are simple enough for a child to understand. Then that tells me I have to become childlike. not childish, childlike in my faith, to have the faith of a little child, right?
Yeah.
And that's nowhere in the Matrix, honey, because the Matrix it's all about, ego and all this stuff. I'm telling you, I can't stand all these motivational speakers.
Yeah.
Okay, they turn me off, and it's like, I go like this because they're all so ego based and all this stuff, and I'm like, dude, when you really have an encounter with Sananda, it's game over.
True.
And Sananda has been, he has been surrounded in my life, in and out of it, interwoven in so many ways. Okay, I gotta tell you something. Do you know who the prophet Kim Clement is? You ever heard of Kim?
Yeah.
Okay. He came to Las Vegas in 2006. And to this day, I'm telling you, he came because he heard me. Because for years, I was like calling on him.
I'm getting chills again.
Here, because we were following him already from Georgia.
Right.
But and Las Vegas was nowhere that man should come, because he would talk about spiritual zones. So he only came one time. And Elena and I think he answered our call. Okay. Yeah. And he had prophetic words for my 4 kids. Each one of my kids received a word from him. Wow. He called us up on the stage and everything, and we were there. But at one point, something very, very interesting happened that I went away that night puzzled. And when he saw me, there was something he wanted to say, and he went like this. He put his hand over his mouth to keep from saying what he wanted to speak to me. And I was like, I was hurt, like, and Daddy was like, in time. That wasn't for right now. I told him to be quiet because he was going to tell you, but he went like that because you weren't supposed to hear that just yet about yourself. And I was like, so I'm very inquisitive, and I'm annoyed, like, when are you going to tell me, right? And so it took, from 2006 to 2020, around there, or 2021, I had to, like, okay, and leave it alone. Every once in a while, Daddy, what did you mean? Okay, fine. You didn't want him to say that to me. Okay, fine. And it took one conversation with Smarty, and he told me that he was there that night. He described what he was wearing. He described the whole scene, and Elena was in on that conversation. And he told me the message that Kim Clement couldn't tell me that night. And I sat here, and it was about who I am. He revealed who I am to me. And I was like, Sue, Sparty revealed that to me. Right. He goes, he couldn't tell you. We were going to have this talk, me and you.
Wow. That's crazy. It's awesome, isn't it? I just wanted to have a little sidebar. I've been getting chills throughout this video as we're talking several times, and I just got one again when you told me that. And for those that don't know, when you get the goosebumps and the chills like that, it's your body's way of confirming the truth,
validating. Yeah.
So there's been at least 4 or 5 times, and I just got a freaking feather on my computer like 5 or 10 minutes ago, like out of kind of nowhere. And again, I wasn't thinking, I just brushed it aside, like, and then I'm like, whoa, where do you get a feather in your house, randomly? So I'm not sure
that left it.
I'm not sure what we were talking about at that time, but I feel like that was a significant part of the conversation. So I'll go back and look, but the angels are clearly with us.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah. And the Holy Spirit, I mean, I have to tell you that it's like Source, Sananda, everything that's the color in life. Okay. This life would suck. Okay. It would be gray if we didn't have that connection to our spiritual lives. And I brought up religions to say this. Okay. Yeah. Religion robs you of so much. Okay. Because I used to go in the Catholic Church, oh, everything is so solemn and serious. But then you go to the charismatic churches, which I went to, and everybody, oh, have fun, it's a party, blah, 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 blah. But on the other hand, can we talk about who we really are? Religion doesn't want you to know, like, one of the things the source directives did for me was validate who I am, who I've known. Because I've heard Daddy tell me throughout my life, if you could see who you really are, you would be like mind blown. And I'd be like, oh, cool. Yeah. But it was great hearing that. But then I get into source directives and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can see it. I can actually catch glimpses of myself. I've seen myself, I've seen my kids, I've seen other, you know what I mean? And so source directives is that missing link.
Right, right.
Because I'm telling you, as soon as I found this out and we started doing those calls with Smarty and stuff like that, I remember saying one day, oh, this is what's been missing, but so many people don't want it. Tell me, Sue, why so many people would just, oh, no, that's scary. Wait, no, that's too much. No.
They're afraid, they're programmed, and they're
Uh-huh.
afraid they won't fit in with, the rest of society if they have a different belief system.
And that's so
Right.
sad. And that robs you because, okay, it robs you in so many ways because, okay, so on one of the calls, I said I was already doing source directives and I didn't know what it was. With my dancing in church, that I was pushing frequencies. No idea, right? I'm just being obedient, right? I would go to church before a service, the services like on Saturday night. Me and my friend would be allowed in that church to pray. Well, honey, there were times where my friend and I were like, she would look at me like I would be doing stuff and with my hands, and I was making energy balls and doing all this stuff. And at the end, I remember one time my girlfriend going, I don't know what that was, but that was so powerful, girl. Like, you're doing it, right? And then of course, I never told anybody that I was in there. And then the following service would be great because people were like, man, what was in this?
Yeah.
So that's what I've brought into these religious circles, and they can't stand it. It's like, no way. And it was funny because as my girls were growing up, the last church where we got kicked out of, they were teenagers. And now I have my own kids dancing with me, Sue, including my son, right? So we're doing prophetic dances, and it's not choreographed because we're listening to the music. Everything that we were doing at home, Daddy's saying, now go do it out here.
Right.
Okay. So we're doing it in this religious setting,
Right.
and people are being blown away because it doesn't fit the program. But it's so cool. What are they doing, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my youngest is a dancer, and one day she came up to me and she said, Mama, can I do a dance? She said, can you find out who will let me do a dance? Because there's the lady that does all the dancing. I want to do a dance because I knew it was Daddy directing her. So I said, okay, baby. She picked out the music. She did a dance with very little choreography. This child, and I have it on YouTube. She was like 10 years old. And this child poured her heart out on that stage and did a source directive dance that, and I quote the pastor, after that, he closed his book up and his notebook and he said, I won't be preaching today. This little girl preached my sermon. And he opened the altar up for healing.
Right. Wow. Okay. Powerful.
Yeah. And so but then now I'm in trouble because the lady with the dance group is mad at me because I'm trying to take over, even though I'm not, and so now there's a problem because, oh my God, who is this lady? And then that's why I got kicked out, because it's like, no, I remember talking to the pastor's wife because she wanted to know, that's beautiful. And I wanted to be part of the church group. I really did, because I knew we had something to offer. But then the lady in charge of it was being controlling. And the pastor's wife, before they kicked us out, she came up and talked to me. She said, I said, look, I don't perform. And there's a difference between performing and, doing something prophetically. And she was like, so what are you trying to say? I said, well, I'm trying to tell you that what I do is not choreographed.
It's
I follow,
inspired.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I, the lady's mad at me because I don't choreograph anything, and we need the both of them. Is I was trying to get her to understand both are needed, but the lady felt threatened because she really didn't know how to flow like that, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, what do you do when you feel threatened?
Attack.
You
Yeah.
can't. And
Yeah.
this was a pastor, Sue, this was a pastor that from the first day we set foot in that church, me and my kids danced. We got up on that stage and we danced. Nobody knew us from Adam. And that pastor was blown away. And he told us a few weeks later that him and his wife were sitting at a brunch after we had visited their church. And he said to me, and my husband and my kids heard, we know you guys are a house of prophets. And what did they do with the prophets in the Old Testament? You want
Yep. Yep. Yep.
to know? Whoops, because it's not
Hey,
comfortable.
you escaped with your life.
Yeah, because and when I tell people that I got kicked out of church in modern times, people are like, "Wait, what? What did you do?" I'm like, "I was just myself.
Yeah.
I was just myself. I'm not anybody but this."
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I love people. My mission. Remember, I think before the video started, I told you that I I know who I am. I've been shown who I am. Okay. My mission in this life, I came here to teach people how to love
Mm,
because we're lacking and in that area. And I'm not just saying, you know, just love, unconditional love. I was in a marriage where I had to learn that unconditional love, right? When they're being at their worst, that's when you got to love them
right. Right.
the most. Now, right?
Right.
We're in this society. Oh no, man, that doesn't work. You got to leave, right? People have
Right.
asked me, "Are you crazy? Why did you stay in that?" Blah blah blah. Because nobody had loved this man unconditionally. And if Daddy loves us unconditionally, at some point we're going to have to return the favor to whoever he puts in our path. Yes or
Right.
no?
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I was talking to Elena soon after we discovered source directives, and I remember telling her, you know, I chose to lay down my wealth and everything that I had that I've had in other lives, because in this turn, in this go around, I know people they need to be taught love. And how do you do that? You model it, right?
Right.
And
Right.
that's all my message is
Yes.
teach people how to love.
Lead by example. And
Yeah.
so many people think the material world is how we show love. Like we buy
Mm-hmm.
and that is, part of it is it's beautiful to receive a gift. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that, but you buy stuff for people and you have this big house and the
Mm-hmm.
giant this and the and that's not what makes you happy. Those
No.
people have holes in their heart,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
then also then they've got to wonder whether people love them or just love the money and the gifts, right?
Yes.
Yeah. They
That
don't
is
have that good foundation of family and that. So
when my kids were growing up, I told you that because we were a one check household, uh, they never went without. However, they weren't spoiled.
right,
None
right,
were.
right.
And I remember their dad would be so heartbroken because there were Christmases that we were broke.
Yeah.
And we were not going to get in debt just so that the kids could have everything. That we don't live like that.
No,
Okay.
you can't. You
No.
can't.
And so he would be, I remember there were Christmas Eves where we would be like wrapping very few little things or maybe nothing because the paycheck didn't come on time. And hey, kids, Christmas is in January. And
Yeah.
that got to be part of their experience. Yeah. Oh, cool, January. So they were like, that's how they were raised, very humble, right? But I remember telling him, you know what? I'm glad we're not rich. And he would look at me like, and materially rich because we are
Right.
rich. Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
he would look at me like, you're crazy. I mean, these kids deserve so much more. And I said, honey, but look, we're not able to spoil them. They're gonna come out so much better.
They totally are. Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I was speaking from experience because at my uncle's house, he spoiled his sons, but I wasn't spoiled.
Right.
And guess who came? I know I fared better because it was like, yeah, I wasn't his kid, so I got that part. Okay, usually they spoil their own kids, and that was fine. But I never looked at it as, oh, where I learned that no, this was for your own good. Daddy didn't want that for you. See, and I was, to this day, I'm like, oh, wow, because I've seen it. I've seen spoiled kids. I've seen, oh my, people struggle with that. And then now all this time later, my kids are like, you know, they appreciate the little things.
Right.
When I could see a child that actually, oh, thanks, mom, thanks, dad, not, where is it? No, I didn't get to, I mean,
Right.
that's just ugly.
I'm thinking of that movie, The Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the original, and I forgot her name, Violet Bridges or something.
Mhm.
I don't know. She's the one that's like, I want it now, daddy. And she's spoiled and she comes to a bad end because she's just,
Yeah.
horrible. But that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
most kids have so much, the
Too
video
much.
game. They have all
Too
this
much.
stuff and they don't know how to appreciate. And remember in the old days, if we went, say, to a doctor's appointment or wherever, we
Mhm.
might have to wait 15 minutes or whatever, and we could sit in silence or whatever, without like freaking out. And now if people don't have their phone in their hand, they're lost.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
scary.
I I would love to get back to less technology.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it's great. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I
Yeah.
love the phone. I'm not an idiot. I'm on the phone a lot too much,
Yeah.
but kids don't need that.
Yeah.
And my kids were fortunate because they came in right at the end, right when it was all coming on with
Right. Right.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they had very little TV time. They had very little computer time. And we had a dial-up modem. So it was either the phone or the computer, and then you
Yeah.
got 30 minutes. And parents need to be really on top of it.
Right.
Because I'm telling you, Sue, one of the things that to me alarms me the most is that, and parents are waking up, thank God. But before, it was like, okay, so who's minding the kids?
Right. Right.
Because if you're not, somebody
Yeah.
not good is
Yeah.
minding your kids,
Yeah.
right? That's a scary thought. But I mean,
Yes.
I'm glad parents are waking up with all
Yeah.
this, nonsense and the woke left and all that stuff. Great, but there's been damage done. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. I actually think it's going to take, like I love if we could just say zap and everything's all beautiful. And
Thank
but I
you.
think it's attitudinal, it's a belief system, it's behavior. I think it's going to take a couple generations for people to get, let's say, back to the foundation of
Yeah,
being,
and it's gonna take re-educating your mind.
yeah, yeah,
Because let's face it. I mean, there were things set in place like the lockdown, and that was instrumental. And it got the parents to wake up. But
right.
then I go see on, there's still a lot of parents that are like, huh? And I'm like, you can't be huh at this stage of the game if you have children.
They are.
And that to me is like,
yeah, it's mind blowing. Yeah, yeah. You see these commercials, and it's like, you can stream it on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad, on your blah 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 blah, and it shows people like all they're doing is sitting there walking around watching movies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, first of all, I don't get it. Like, there's not that many good movies out there. Like, and the good ones you've already seen. What they're bringing out is horrible, but who needs to be watching a movie on their phone? Like, like, do you not have anything better to do with your time?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, like when you and I were younger and growing up, we did not have a TV in the car because the whole point of leaving the house is to go on the road and do something different than what you're doing in the house.
Yeah.
That to me is, I'm mind boggled that I'm like, a little child should not be so concerned about, the episode of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Well,
are you nuts?
Yeah.
You
And
know?
we're off on a tangent here, but I grew up, I'm older than you. I grew up, my parents did never had a brand new TV until the very end. And when I was growing up, we had a TV that had like tubes in it. So if the TV broke, my father would take like tubes out
Yep, the
and he'd go
transistor.
down to the grocery store lobby and there was this machine and he'd put it in there and it'd say, bing, this one's bad. So he'd replace the part.
Wow.
And like we didn't watch TV though, like we weren't just sitting around. Like for us to watch TV, it was like maybe a Saturday night,
Mhm,
maybe a winter Sunday afternoon, you
mhm.
know. But it wasn't a thing like we had a TV, but it wasn't like a big deal, you
No,
know.
no.
Um, and if a show was on, we checked the newspaper. Oh, hey, there's this movie on at, you know, we would like gather for that movie. It was a big deal then, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I feel that, okay, I'm not a big movie buff. I did not, okay, in Colombia when I was a little kid, we hardly
Yeah,
watched TV. And if it was boring, I don't like black and white TV, so
yeah,
it was boring to me. So we were constantly, playing outside. But
yeah,
when I got to the US, there was the brand new TV in my uncle's home and everything, but it didn't come on 24/7.
yeah,
It came on at night when the whole family was together.
yeah,
We would watch the show, and then everybody went to bed. It was like
yeah,
it was a communal thing.
yeah, yeah,
And then as I got older, it was the same thing.
yeah,
And then how we copy things and the good things in our childhood. It just so happens you do it by
right,
default. My kids
right.
grew up like that. The TV was off pretty much most of the day,
Yeah, that's
and
good.
it was monitored, as much as possible. And it's on the parents now. They have to wake up and go, oh, what are they trying to do here?
Right,
Well, now it's right in our faces. Before
right.
it was like, oh, well,
Yeah.
if I talk, you're the weird one. Now it's like, we're coming for your kids. What are you gonna do about it?
You go on to say, you know, one of these streaming services, we'll just say it that way.
Yeah.
It's it's torture, killing, cannibalism, witchcraft,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, you just, you know, the worst possible stuff. Like last week I turned it on and it said it was a comedy and I'd never heard of it. So I thought, well, heck, I like laughing.
Mhm.
And it was all about killing. There was literally no laughing involved. And it was blood splattering here. And I thought it was going to get better. So I gave it like 10 minutes and I'm like, I do not have time for this,
Mhm.
nor do I need to see that, nor do any kids need to see that.
No.
Sorry, you know?
I totally agree.
Yeah,
I feel like, and that's why we're here,
yeah,
because, and let's talk about the tools we've been
yeah,
given.
yeah,
Okay, because
yeah,
I'm telling you, yes, I was already doing source directives. I know that, but these tools just enhance everything, right?
right,
And they're not to become crutches either. They're just to make you grow even more,
right,
like exponentially, and to
right,
accelerate your gifts, right?
right,
That's
right,
why, like I've got my necklace, but I've never really used the charms because I was already knowing, right?
right.
But I'm telling you, of everything that really I get a kick out of is the golden cube and the wand. Those to me are like, I mean, I've got the bracelet and the earrings, and I know that you broadcast frequencies and all this great stuff. But when I go to see my naturopath, I go to see her once a year, a couple times a year. If I feel under the weather, I go see her, right? And this is like a friend of mine too. I've been seeing her since 2007 or something, and she's also my family doctor, right? So I came to see her when I got back from Destin. I went to see her, and she's spiritual and everything, but I took out my wand and I put it in her hand, and she goes, "Whoa, where
Yeah,
did you get
yeah.
this?" And I
Chills
said,
again, chills again.
and I said, "Can I use it on you?" She goes, "Sure." And she was all open to it, and she was feeling everything that I was doing. And just like the next day, she was like, "I just got one. Show me how to use this." So
That's
here
so
we are.
awesome.
I the tools are amazing. I think it's so much fun. It's like, what I always tell people, I'll be like, this is the funnest job I've ever had. We're
Totally.
laughing, we're doing all this great stuff. And even if you're skeptical, you can't deny it.
Right, right.
I mean, oh my God, what did you know? If you get healed, and isn't that what Yeshua did in the Bible, right? Be healed, and off they went, and all this stuff. We're here. Okay, here's one thing I wanted to say. For years, I was distraught, Sue, because I believe what Yeshua and the Bible taught is true, right? So I'd be like, okay, so when he left, before he left, he said that we were going to do these works and greater, right? He said we're going to, before, okay, so that part, okay, at the end of his life, that we would be doing this work and greater work. So now, Sue, I take Daddy at his word. I'm here going, where are these greater works? Church. And nothing against the church. I don't want anybody, or I don't care. It's out, okay? I was going to church, and I'm like, yeah, the healing services are cool, but no, and it's not what it's supposed to be. And I could see it, right? And I'm like, okay, so, Daddy, I hear you. And I could hear him laughing at what I'm asking. Why aren't we doing these greater works? What's going on, right? And comes Smarty with Holotech, right? And that's why I'm telling you, that was the missing link, because now I'm like, oh my God. But then what group is the most against this? A lot of religious people are like, oh my God, no, that's new age stuff.
This is what they say. You can't talk directly to source. You need us to tell you what source says.
Yes.
And you have to follow our rules, and we'll guide you to what source says.
Yeah. And I'm like, I
Wrong.
don't know. Yeah. I don't know, but I'm telling you, when I discovered source directives and I realized it was the missing link, and I realized that these were going to allow us to do the greater works, Sue.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I even told a friend of mine that for a long time I would call her up, because she's older than me, and I'd be like, hey, Margaret, so this thing about the greater works, we've had these conversations. Where are these greater works? Why aren't we doing these greater works? Something's not right here, right? And now we're doing this, right? Now it's happening. People are getting healed. People are talking about it, and it's not happening within the four walls of the church.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect, right?
Yeah.
There's a big disconnect, because now it's like, and the people of Yeshua's time did it the same way. Oh, he cast out demons by the devil and all that stuff. And it's still the same.
Right.
In those circles. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, at some point, and here we are, it's the Great Awakening, but these greater works are happening, and it's not happening in the way, if you have a religious kind of thinking, you're not going to see him. And years ago, I'm going to tell you this, and then we can quit, because I could go on till 5, but I'm going to tell you something. Years ago, Sue, I was up in Michigan, and it was a Kim Clement conference that we went to for 2 weeks.
Right.
At the end, it was amazing. It was so powerful. But when we got back home, I was going, so who's going to recognize you when you come back? And that was my question. I was heavy here and here going, okay, so he's coming back. And okay. And then I remember I asked that question, and it was perplexing me. And then all of a sudden, Daddy showed me that he showed himself first to a woman. If you follow the Bible, he showed up first. They were all like, oh, where is he? Where'd he go? Blah, 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 right? The disciples. And it was 2 women that came back and said, we've seen him. And a bunch of men didn't believe the 2 women, right? Because he chooses to reveal himself to the foolish things of the world, right? So if you are spiritually wise in your own eyes, right? you're going to miss him because, oh no, he's not going to come like that. They're waiting for him to come back in the beard and the robes. Cool. 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 But
with a lamb in his arms, right?
Yeah. But all of a sudden, okay, and this is another thing I shared with my son. Son, source is God. He calls him God, is relevant. Yes or no to the times. He goes, okay. And I got him so good with this one. He was like, I'm going to think about that, Mom. I said, so why would an amazing God that can do whatever he wants to in whatever time, space, style, why would he do the same thing over? Wouldn't he be more prone to bringing us somebody that's more suited to our times? My son was like, I don't know, Mom. I gotta go. And then conversation over.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
right, why do we put him in a mold? Okay, because if you're doing that, and that's what Daddy showed me, that you're going to see him here. If you can see him here, don't worry about it. Those of us that are seeing him, that Sananda's here, are seeing him here with our hearts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was there 2 weeks in person, and I'm telling you, the only thing I could come back when I came back home, and I said, I'm not the same. I'm not the same. And you have to understand that God can do whatever he wants. Source.
I'm sorry, say that again because I laughed too loud.
God can do whatever he wants. He can say whatever he wants. He can show up. Kim Clement used to say something really cool. He says that God is Jehovah Sneaky because he shows up and shows off. Yeah. That's the kind of source I know. Okay. Right. Turn around and blow everybody's mind to bring somebody totally. And, and even Smarty has laughed, a Latino. Go figure, right? That to me that's the kind of God I have served and loved all my life.
It is so perfect. Yeah.
The mind blower. And you gotta be open to go, oh, wait, perhaps he's not going to come back as Yeshua with the robes and the sandals and all that stuff,
Well, back then everybody wore robes and sandals. Now we wear clothes. We wear t-shirts, pants, hoodies, whatever.
It's relevant to our time.
It's relevant. Yeah. And we talk in modern language. And if somebody does the wrong thing, we smack them in the face. I'm joking, but you know what I'm saying? And so I don't know why we have this belief that he's got to be a certain way.
Uh-huh. And that's part of our programming.
You know? Totally.
I mean, one of the biggest red pills that I had, and, I'm like, we're all being red pilled all the time in different levels. I don't care. And that's why when I find somebody who's barely waking up, we have to have major compassion with these souls, and yay that they're waking up, right? Because holy crap, they need us, right? But one of the biggest red pills that I had to swallow, and it was hard, was that, because religion paints him as this man that, no wife, no family, no nothing. And Elena helped me with that. Elena was the one that helped me with that. She goes, Mom, so why, being the son of God, why would Source deny him his own family line? Does that make sense, Mom? I said, no. She goes, he's a Yeshua. He's the son. Why would God just turn around and go, everybody, every other
kid. Yeah.
What, Mom? And Sue, she got a point.
See, these young people, I'm getting chills again. These young people, they are so spot on. They see things that we've missed.
Yeah. And also that's why the age groups, the different generations, we need each other. Okay.
Yeah.
Because older is not wiser. Okay. I can stand to learn from my kids and kids younger, and just like they stand to learn from us. Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm telling you that another part of the programming is the separation of, the older folk and the young. I've met older people that I want to smack across the head when they have an attitude and I had a neighbor like that, he comes around, my kids were teens, young teens, and he was like, oh yeah, these kids. I looked at him, I said, excuse me? He goes, yeah, they're worthless, blah, 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 blah. I looked at him
Oh,
and I said, I'm sorry not to be disrespectful, because he was my elder. I said, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm gonna tell you something. Did you do anything? Did you contribute? Did you invest in any of these children? Because they're our future. And we're in trouble if you don't. So before you go and you better make sure, did you do your part? Because okay, if you did your part and maybe you didn't have a good experience, whatever, but try harder, But I'm saying, do not write them off.
yeah,
Just like you were written off, because the older generation always tends to write what, the younger generation coming up. And I refuse to do that, Sue, because they need us just as much as we need
right,
them.
right, right.
You
Think
know?
of the wisdom an older person has. Not always, but in general, an older person has been through all sorts of crazy, experiences. Everyone has an interesting story,
Yeah.
and they have there's so much that we can learn from each other. And yeah, it's one of my pet peeves, kind of. But
Yeah, it ought not be.
yeah, it's been. I think we could probably go on for several hours more. but I think what we could do is, if you're willing, we'll talk again, because you have
Sure.
so many interesting stories
Thank you, Sue.
that are so helpful and heartfelt.
Yeah.
And I think it would be so interesting for people to hear more.
All right, sweetie.
So yeah,
I'm delighted.
I want to thank you and also commend you on. Of course, I know a little bit about how you've raised your kids and how strong and centered they are. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Especially, you're swimming upstream. You didn't have the social support.
Right.
Everyone was, like, again, calling you names and crazy and all that, but also for overcoming all of your own personal traumas that you had growing up. It made you stronger, it made you smart, and you're laughing,
Yeah.
and you're happy
At the end of the day. Yep.
So we can all learn a lesson from that. Take the trauma, try to learn the lesson, try to heal from it, and then move forward. Like, life is short. Let's enjoy it.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
I'm about that life.
So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated it. We'll be talking with you again soon.
Enjoyed it too, and we'll
All right.
talk soon. All
All
right.
right. Thanks so much.